I am going to do 2019 Psychic Predictions, and some of this stuff is not really psychic. It's more like analysis of things to come, and I want to also review 2018 Psychic Predictions, but I don't want to do it in the beginning, because 2018 it was all negative and became totally focused on the three criminal nations, the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, and all the wars that they create. So I'm not gonna go after them, but I do want to review and also make more predictions about these three countries. But in the beginning, I want to focus on the rest of the world, and I think that 2019 is going to be economically a very good year for many countries, and not only economically, but also they will gain more sovereignty, whether that sovereignty would be military or political or financial. And the countries that have undermined them, like United States, Israel, and the financial cabal, or the Saudis and the Wahhabis, they're going to be on the waning side. Their influence is going to be nil, or is going to diminish. And right now, China is building the Silk Road, or One Road, One Belt, and also doing a lot of infrastructure in Africa and Central Asia. And these infrastructures, these ports, these roads, these railways, they going to create a boom, economic boom in the world, in very unlikely places. And also many countries already have a sizable middle class, like India, China, Iran. I don't want to focus too much on Arab countries, but the Russians, they have been getting wealthy slowly. They do have a middle class. So the world, other countries except these three countries, they're going to experience a year that's similar to the good days, the good old days for United States, the 1950s. I've been watching some of the videos and stuff that comes out from, for example, India, Iran, Azerbaijan. There is a lot of wealth that's already there and is getting generated. Also, many countries, they have become manufacturers. They make most of their own stuff. For example, Iran makes its own military hardware. It has extensive agriculture and industries. Same goes ditto. I was seeing videos about even Pakistan makes its own weapons. They have a nice economy. India, the manufacturing is taken off in India, if it's not already there. And then China, many countries, they're experiencing phenomenal growth, and because their government and their people, they don't spend inordinate amount of their wealth or income on military ventures and expeditions or fighting with neighbors. That money, that wealth that's generated seeps into their society, and they are becoming really wealthy. And in fact, over here in the United States, the perception that many Americans have of like India or Iran or China is very old opinion, and those countries are nothing like what the Americans think. I was talking to one Chinese student, and we were talking about cell phones, and a lot of the cell phones they're far more advanced and more expensive, with many features. He was telling me that yes, we make cell phones for the Americans, but they're very much mass produced. They're lower qualities than the cell phone that I have right now. He showed me his Chinese cell phone. So I think that the economic growth is going to be phenomenal in Africa, in Central Asia, in India, in Iran, in many countries that do not engage in warfare, or they don't have financial fraud. Also, in the last few years, there has been development in the cryptocurrencies and also tokens that represent shares of companies. For example, in Africa, they don't have all these corrupt banks and institutions, and they have very few regulations. So these better forms of currency or technologies are going to prosper these people a lot more than Americans or Europeans. Also, other parts of the world, they look at wealth as being able to create it by manufacturing, by making stuff. So usually, many countries they are more interested in science and engineers, and they use them to create the new wealth. I think that technologically, China and Russia are far ahead of the United States in many areas. The other thing that is going to change everything in 2019 is the Russian anti-aircraft and electronic warfare equipment that's coming to many countries, and also they have manufactured very nice planes, like similar to 787 or 747. I think they call it Superjet 100. So Sukhoi Superjet 100. So many countries, many smaller countries that were defenseless in their airspace against the United States or Israel or their neighbors. For example, India had problems, and by acquiring these systems like S-400, they are able to prevent hostile aircrafts to come in and bomb them, like carpet bomb them. I don't know if Afghanistan will get such systems, but like 10, 15, 17 years ago, the United States was able to send in aircrafts from far away and carpet bomb these places. Same with Iraq, but this situation is totally going to change, and that has an impact because then the countries can focus on economic development and not to worry about so much from foreign threats. Excuse me, let me grab something because I'm getting cut on mouth and my diabetes is. So I think that the rest of the world is going to experience very nice economic growth, and Then the other thing that I think is very nice is that some countries or many countries like Russia, China, Iran, India, or Afghanistan. I don't know Afghanistan, but some Arab countries like Hamas, Lebanon too. They have military cooperation and a pact with each other. So, say United States decided to nuke one of these countries, then they are part of this pact and they have a nuclear umbrella that will protect them. So it kind of diminishes the chance that the Americans or the Israelis would use nukes. So basically, there is more sovereignty now, and because of these technological developments, and also more wealth that's generated locally, that I think that it will be very nice. Okay, so another development that a lot of people don't pay attention is that the cell phone technology is going everywhere. And the cell phones, for example, the one I have is almost like an entire computer, and it does so many functions, and it's connected to the network and to the internet. I have internet on my cell phone, unlimited internet, and many places they do have the same thing. So one of the requirements for democracy is freedom of information, freedom that people will know what other people are doing. So even though the technology to block many of these messages is also there, I don't know if China is practicing it or other countries, but there is so much of this stuff, so many, there is abundance of these different technologies that the news in a given country will get around no matter what the government does or not. And so people in many countries, they kind of behave themselves, but they all know what's going on. And this is one requirement for democracy. I'm not saying that I'm not encouraging anybody to overthrow any government. What I'm saying is that it creates a tendency for social consent, or when a lot of people are aware of a problem, it kind of seeps into the higher echelon of society, or for example, in Iran, it seeps into the Majlis or parliament, or India too, and or the upper echelons of the communist regime. They become aware, hey, there's this big problem, and then they have a chance to a little lag time to react to it, and they do. And so also because the interference of Israel, ISIS, and the United States in Syria failed, despite all the money and influence, they got kicked out, or ISIS was defeated. Then this is going to reverberate in the world, because the United States comes around with the help of Wahhabis or Israelis and gives money and weapons to different localities. And many countries, they have many different minorities there. Say, for example, if the US came around and gave weapons and money to the Armenians, and they could start a big shit in Caucasia, or they do so with Kurds. And now that this whole business has failed, I think many of these terrorists or belligerent little minorities, they kind of would be very careful, because they could get their asses kicked if things go sour. Uh, but let's not talk about the negative stuff until the end of the video. And then another development that is going to have huge impact is the new technologies, AI and 3D printing, and the fact that there are many networks for distribution like eBay or Overstock, over here in other countries Alibaba. So when there is a new technology that makes things cheaper or more available, it kind of seeps in very quickly into other areas in the world. And I was watching some videos with many countries using Asian countries like Vietnam or Korea. There are so many of these places popping up everywhere, and they manufacture anything you want for you. I think also there's a lot of intermingling of different races. But the Sufi master had said something about this many years ago, that the humanity is becoming far more integrated than ever before. Then this also in several countries, in European and American too, there is this tendency for ultranationalism now, or fascism, because everything is produced so cheaply, all the services, and they, for example, in Europe or in the United States, they have a labor price or labor structure. They first of all, they lose their jobs because the jobs are outsourced and there is little they can do, and their thinking is like capitalism in 1950s, and they are unable or they are unwilling to adopt to a new economic order. Well, the more we go towards a zero marginal cost society, the more socialist we're going to become, whether we like it or not. And then there has to be the government has to take steps to make sure that all the wealth that's generated by machinery or by AI is also distributed. It doesn't stay with the certain class. I think that the United States is going to engage in very socialist programs like basic income, helicopter money, and also the dollar will collapse. Many countries they don't want United States around at all. They are very destructive. They ruined several Muslim countries, and many countries, even big countries, are very apprehensive of United States government coming in and make a huge mess in their cities, bomb them. Well, last year Trump made kind of like an agreement or peace with North Korea, but I was reading that they continue very rapid weapons development. Nobody really trusts the United States, and their government is engaged in military Keynesianism. Their stock market is collapsing, and there are other psychics predict the collapse of the bourgeoisie because technology makes producing everything cheap and available. Well, capitalism in its core needs scarcity. Something would be scarce, and some guy or a gatekeeper or a rich dude would buy this scarce stuff, and then take it around and sell it at a higher price elsewhere. But if everything becomes decentralized, and for example, if I have or if the shop next door has a 3D printing and printing everything almost to zero price, then what scarcity is there? Or if there is a lot of labor, which is the case, and there is manufacturing everywhere, well, what would be the reason for somebody to pay exorbitant price for something that is manufactured elsewhere? Say, for example, Trump put tariffs on Chinese goods. Well, China is not the only manufacturer. There are many, 10, 12, and what about Vietnam? What about India? What about Korea? What about many new manufacturing hubs? And then you can't stop it. It's a manufacturing evolution, and also technologically we are going towards zero marginal cost, whether the American government likes it or not. And okay, I covered the economics and also the fact that many countries will not be afraid of United States militarily, and on the political front, many countries are making military or political pacts with each other. I put some videos shows that, for example, like Iran is hosting Taliban to make peace with each other. Really, everybody wants to make peace except the Americans and the Israelis. But let me just deal with them at the end of the video. Barring Americans starting nuclear war, the 2019 would be a very good year economically, and also a lot of integration between different countries. And excuse me. Okay, so this brings us out to the last topics, which is we cannot get away from dealing with the Wahhabis and the Zionist criminals and the Americans, that they just won't stop. They lost Syria. They are losing in Yemen. The Yemenis are able to attack back Saudis. They using drones and rockets, and the Saudis want to make peace, but I don't know if that will be possible. They went and tried to block or take over the only port that was bringing food and supplies, and I think they lost there too. I was watching some of the videos. Another trend is that because there is a glut of oil productions, and many countries are also using other sources of energy like liquefied natural gas, solar or wind, the demand for oil is up, but there is also a lot of supply. So the price of oil is going to be limping along 50, 40, I don't know, if things get worse, 30. And then if this goes on, the Saudis had been engaged in warfare and support terrorist organizations, and very profligate princes. They have appropriated a lot of the oil revenue. So this regime will have financial problems, and on top of all of that, they have engaged in Game of Thrones. They're killing each other. They're killing each other's the other princes are killing each other. Well, I saw that I was pretty sure that Salman bin Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, was killed. Well, I'm still kind of debating with myself if this has been the case, because the Saudis, they lie. They don't want to say that their past princes have been killed. For example, for many years they hide the fact that Prince bin Dar had died, was killed in Syria, and then they had a state funeral, and by all appearance it looked as if MBS had been knocked out. Well, I think many countries also use actors or props to show leaders. What I think is really happened is that he was killed. They're using an actor, and then on many of the ceremonies or meetings with Pompeo and other leaders, I see that there are other princes show up to talk to Pompeo or to Trump. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I think that the minor princes that got together and killed him, they want to use him to commit more crimes against each other without being in the limelight, something like that. They're a bunch of murderers, and the Wahhabism is not part of Islam, and also many countries totally know about these groups, and they are blocked everywhere. Well, I think that the U.S. and the Wahhabis, they help many despots come into power in many countries like Egypt and like Azerbaijan. They also pay homage to these idiots. In Turkey, Erdogan, he caters to anybody that comes around and gives him any kind of money. He was himself supporting ISIS, and then he backstabbed them and went into friendship with the Russians and buying their weapons. He will sleep with anybody. I don't know what will happen to these despots, like in Turkey or Azerbaijan or the little states or in South America, when this whole dollar system collapses or the SWIFT system collapses, and many countries are able to get foreign income in gold from China, or get it in rubles from the Russians. It's gonna be a big mess. I do think that the Saudis are killing each other, and at the end of this cycle, there will rise a military person that might not even be connected to Wahhabis or the Saudi family or clan, and he will be the fascist leader like Trump here. I do think that Trump is secretly killing the deep state officials or politicians. I thought that the death of McCain and Bush Sr., I think they were court-martialed, but hey, I'm not in the close to this system to know exactly what happened, and there is a lot of rumors of tribunals and court-martials. I did talk about this in 2018, that this will turn violent, and usually when empire collapses, there is a fascist state comes in with a strong man like Trump or Erdogan. The Ottomans fell apart. They had Ataturk, which was really military leader, and then we now have Erdogan. This is the fate of fascist regimes. Last year, well, I had predicted that Israel will get occupied, and their troubles will start from Golan Heights, but it didn't happen as rapidly as I thought. They had trouble in the UN. Many Arabs, well, the Russians told them that the Golan Heights doesn't belong to you. I think they're getting them ready to get their butts kicked very hard. But what else that happened that was very important is that because now there is so many anti-aircraft systems all around them in Syria, S-300, and other countries around Israel, they're all buying these systems. Well, these systems, they have radars that penetrate. I don't know, S-400 has radar that penetrates 150 miles, but I think S-300 has radar that penetrates like 100 miles. That means that basically Israel cannot fly any of their Air Force planes without being targeted. Or I don't know if when they get targeted and they get down, if they even report it. I think the Israeli military hides or does not publish the fact that their planes are getting knocked out. But when this trend accelerates, then basically they'll be without an air force, and their military and their population is small, and they're extremely susceptible to ground force incursions from Lebanon or by even Hamas or from Syria. And I think I very much pray that the surrounding countries, they can occupy this place and stop these people from committing all these crimes against all their neighbors, and also influence peddle everywhere in the United States, in Europe, and they have been so successful. Many commentators they're shy away from even talking about the Zionist criminals, but I don't care. I'm not paid by them. I don't care about them. I predict that Israel will get occupied, and the other concern is that the United States is sending aircraft carriers to the Persian Gulf, and the Iran and some other countries, they're totally capable of sinking these things. I don't know what they will pull out of the hat. If they use nukes, then they're gonna get nuked too. It will be like a World War III, but maybe limited nuclear engagements. Well, I saw that there was a Russian video was saying that the Russians have invented hypersonic stealth rockets, which are almost impossible. They go like 27 times the speed of sound. There is no system that can shoot these things down. But I don't know if the mutually assured destruction scenario really exists anymore for Americans. But technologically, things are progressing so fast that many countries are not really saying how able they are technologically to confront Americans and Israelis or Saudis. Well, then if they start something, they're gonna get really whacked. There is a Psychic Predictions by Edgar Casey. Says that it was for 2018 and on, that he had concern that many American service people or American people will end up in prisons or foreign prisons, and this is the price for endless warfare with foreign countries and engagement that does not benefit anybody, and everybody wants them out. I put out a picture on my Facebook, shows Trump in the economic summit, and everybody was holding each other's hand. They didn't want to hold Trump's hand. It just gives the sentiment that we really don't want you, or Americans, and we just want to skirt away, let you do what you want in your own country. Well, the last part of this 2019, well, the stock market is doing its crash is like supposed to, and because it's a multiple bubbles, this is going to be very bad. I mean, if somebody has really heart problems and they have a really big heart attack, it doesn't mean that they're going to be reborn as a little baby. Okay, what is usually the scenario is that they'll just die. And the economic system has to change completely. I mean, I hear some commentators like Peter Schiff says, okay, well, this system is going to die, and then we're going to go back to the capitalism that we had in 1950s. Well, sorry, I mean, everything is different. All the manufacturing is different. There is all these technologies that prevent fraud. The Wall Street wants to continue. So I think the more likely scenario is that a very severe recession, and then complete socialism for a nice long while. Well, I don't know if the capitalism will come back, or what if it didn't. What else I want to cover? This is just about it. Oh, one last thing. There is prophecies by Prophet Muhammad, and there are signs for end times. And I see there is a guy, Khabri, in Israeli news. He kind of goes into Old Testament, reads those prophecies, and kind of interprets them according to his wishes and desires, that the Zionists will prosper and everything will be fine, la la la. But that's not true. There are prophecies by Prophet Muhammad. He mentions many signs of end times, and the signs, if you go on the videos that I posted on my Facebook, you see the signs are like 5, 6, 7 signs, and they're all one by one after the other. One of the signs was that many people will refrain from traveling because the communication will be so well and extensive that they are able to communicate with each other. Well, I had installed Messenger and IMO, and well, with the IMO, which is similar to Messenger, on my cell phone, I was talking to my mother. She's in Tehran, or in Damavand, which is like a little town. And I also used the Messenger to talk to my ex and my son. They are in Ohio. That's one of the signs that end times. Another end time sign, he talks about terrorism, and that like the terrorist, the person that's doing the killing, doesn't know why he's killing, and the person that's being killed doesn't know why this person killed him. So it's like it's very manifest and very much you cannot doubt that this is exactly what's happening. One of the other signs, he was talking about that there will be all these tall buildings, and like in places like Dubai, the Bedouin that 50, 60 years ago they had nothing in there. They're competing with each other to see who can make the tallest building. This sign itself is like very telling. This is the end times. So and then Prophet Muhammad has other prophecies which are not very favorable to Israel or Jews, but there is one very last thing I want to say about 2019. That's kind of like a Christian omen. Okay, so the number 2019 is 19 in Islamic numerology has a strong meaning. A lot of this number comes up if you add the abjad numbers. See, in Arabic, every letter has an associated number. When you add them up, for example, in Allah, God, when you add the numbers up, you get 19. On the surahs, this number comes up. If, for example, Surah Hamd, which is one of the first surah, reads, if you add up all the abjad numbers, you get 19 multiplied by 19 and multiplied by 19. It comes up so many times. So this is like a code word or code number. And also it does come up in a lot of celestial mechanic, some locations on the planet, 19 by 33 longitudinal. I have kind of read through some of this stuff. I don't know, in torsion field physics. I don't know. It's something to look at. But the number 2019 is like 219, to God. Well, there's a lot of prophecies that they say that Jesus will come back at end times. And the Islamic version says, well, Mehdi, the last Imam, will come, and then after that Jesus will come, and then there will be 1,000 years of peace, and something like that. I thought that this was very much like an omen, the kind of interpretation. Well, then there is one very last thing, is that one could interpret these things in a spiritual way. For example, if you look at the Maslow triangle, on the lower level is the basic needs. As the civilization becomes more prosperous, more spiritual aspects of humanity comes out. And then what if our civilization has gotten to a point that aspect of humanity which is like spiritual, or which is like Jesus or Imam Mahdi, comes out, and this could be an interpretation of that. I don't know. This is as far as I want to go with those ideas. Well, thank you very much for being in my YouTube channel. And also remember, the finger that points to the moon is not the moon. Okay, so I'm not somebody in a high ranking, spiritually. This is just a psychic. Have a nice day.